Welcome to episode 92 of Anchored in Education. I'm E. Scott England, and Anchored in Education is the podcast dedicated to all things education. Educators across the world routinely engage in conversations surrounding fundamentals, concepts, and new ideas that improve this great profession. Sometimes we agree, other times we disagree. But at the end of the day, we are all anchored in education. All right, so I'm just going to be totally honest with you. I have an on-again, off-again relationship with TikTok. It's love-hate, so to speak. Actually, that is completely unfair. TikTok has done nothing but provide me with countless videos that have made me laugh, made me cry, made me think, and made me curious. My kids will tell you one of the best things to come out of my TikTok For You page was a cast iron mac and cheese recipe. It is requested often and would be served weekly if they had their choice. I would tell you the greatest thing to come out of TikTok for me would be yet another platform to engage with educators across the world. I've seen classroom hacks, teaching strategies, vents that left me nodding my head because, hey, I've been there, done that. Above all else, seeing this constant stream of teacher-created videos shows me how passionate educators are. My point was proven when creator @It's Mr. Finn popped up during my scrolling one day. I watched with anticipation as choral teacher Myles Finn had part 3 of his big spring musical reveal. It wasn't a reveal like a drum roll please a la Chevy Chase in Christmas Vacation. No, Myles elaborately planned out the big reveal to have plot twists, doppelganger appearances, and hidden props. And with a little help from Alexa, the musical was revealed. I was one of over 80 million combined views of his 3-part reveal. And today he joins us to not only talk about that reveal, but how he approaches teaching. Myles, welcome to Anchored in Education.
So excited to be here. This is awesome.
All right, I have to say, I am trying not to freak out in a crazed fan way right now because of what we're going to talk about. But we're going to get to that, I promise. First, though, we'd like to find out a little bit more about you and how you became anchored in education.
Sure. So I am currently teaching at Indianola High School in Indianola, Iowa, which is about 20 minutes south of Des Moines. This is my 8th year teaching. I teach vocal music at Indianola. With that, I am the director of 2 extracurricular show choirs. I direct the musical. I direct 3 curricular choirs, and I teach voice lessons when I'm not working with those ensembles. So makes for a packed schedule, but it's a lot of fun. So like I said, 8th year of teaching, 5 years at Indianola. I taught at a pretty small rural school just north of Ames, Iowa, called South Hamilton for 3 years prior to being at Indianola. And then I got my bachelor's from Wartburg College, which is also in Iowa. And then I got my master's degree in choral conducting at Michigan State.
I'd say that is quite a background. Just curious if you were originally from Iowa as well.
I am, yeah. So I grew up in Northeast Iowa, another small rural school called West Delaware. I actually met my wife there. We're high school sweethearts. So we've known each other since middle school show choir. It's kind of a fun story, but yeah, so from Iowa originally.
So just listening to what you teach as part of your main duties, and then you also said you're giving vocal lessons on the side. Is this the path you saw yourself on when you entered college?
100% no. I honestly, I was like, no, like, I don't think music is like the thing for me. I shouldn't say music isn't the thing. I don't think teaching was the thing for me right away. And so I went to actually my undergrad and started with the idea of being like a business major. And from actually taking my first class, which was macroeconomics, I was like, nope, business isn't for me. But I had a blast with the choral program, and I was like, this is something that I could really see myself doing. And actually my undergraduate director, Dr. Nelson, is like one of the biggest inspirations for me becoming a choral teacher. Not to mention my high school director was incredible. And so he just gave me a wonderful experience, being a choral student, I had a lot of fun with him. Got to do show choir, like I said, and got to do musicals with him as well. So like my educational background was so strong that I like had some great people to lean on if I ever had any questions when I decided to make that change into being an educator.
Okay, we're not going to keep anyone in suspense today about those viral TikToks you had. We're talking over 80 million combined views of the 3-part video series where you had the big reveal of what the 2023 musical was going to be in the spring. Can you take us through the process of the reveal up to that final day?
Yeah. So it was actually my wife and I co-direct the musical at Indianola. So she's my choreographer.
Oh, okay.
And she helps me with like set design and things like that. She's a genius with things like that. And so we had the conversation pretty early on. We had decided a long time ago, probably back in it was probably mid-March. So while we were producing our last musical, actually, that we decided we were going to do the Addams Family.
Oh,
and so we were like,
wow. So this is in planning for a long time.
yeah. And you kind of need to. Normally it's about a year in advance that we try to plan it out, try to have an understanding of, what sort of personnel do we have, who could fill like certain roles, like what really trips our trigger with what musical we want to do, so on and so forth. And then so we decided as we got closer to, the first week of school, like, okay, we got to announce this in kind of a fun way.
Yeah.
And we'd seen other TikToks of other teachers that had been doing a reveal, but I'm like, let's amp it up a notch.
Yeah. Let's go all out.
Yeah, exactly. So what I did is I posted 13 different musicals on our whiteboard in our choir room, just saying like it could be Mary Poppins, it could be Beauty and the Beast, things that kids had known.
Sure.
I even put Hamilton on there. Like there are no rights for Hamilton. Nobody in central Iowa should be performing like Hamilton, but whatever. So I put all these musicals on there. Kids were super excited. But it was actually my wife's idea to not put the Addams Family up on the whiteboard.
Okay.
And so the suspense was building. We got to that final day. And as it shows in the video, there are 2 musicals that remain. I think it was Beauty and the Beast and Mary Poppins. And I ripped both of those down and I crumple them up. And then from there, just like all chaos ensued. It was so fun.
Chaos for sure. I love the student that was like, what?
Yeah.
So I know the reveal at this level is unique to this year, but have you had reveals of other musicals in the past?
Pretty much every year. I try to reveal it in a way that like gets them excited for what the musical is going to be. And like I've done like PowerPoint presentations, or I've done just like a long drum roll and just been dramatic in different ways, but this one I was like, I'm going to just kind of up my ante and get the kids even more excited about it.
Yeah. Now, when you remove the final 2 musicals from the board, indicating they weren't going to be selected, now you could hear, like we said, the astonishment of students. What captured my attention, as did your students, was the level of preparation that you put into the big reveal. Now we're talking, you recorded a video in which you had a conversation with yourself. Yep. You had props taped behind screens. You had Alexa play the final reveal.
Right.
Can you talk about what goes into preparing like this and what additional benefits it gives the relationships you have with students?
So I think it's all grounded in my love for drama in like theater in general, and so I actually started with a script. I actually wrote myself like a 1-page, like, how do I want this to lay out? And conveniently, when I'm reading through a script for the musical, it's giving me different cues for like, now this prop is in, and then there's like this movement. And so I was like, I got that descriptive with myself of just being like, okay, now at this moment I'm going to move over to the risers. At this moment I'm going to go and grab my confidential envelope from behind the screen and things like that. So I actually started with a script, and that actually helped me start with how I'm going to like have that conversation with myself on the screen, which it just kind of played into my, being a musical theater geek.
Well, but the thing is, it was great. And so you mentioned that your drama background. I mean, the conversation, trying to describe for listeners, the conversation you're having with yourself. It wasn't like a reading and like waiting for the timing thing. Like there were actions, there were exasperations in there. Yep. There was, the puzzlement of like, well, I don't know, as your video self is telling you one thing, your right. actual self, like responding like, really, I should do this. Right. And so, I mean, what was feedback from students afterwards on that? Did they recognize everything that it took to get to that point?
I think that you can hear it in the video right away of just like what is happening? Like just absolute minds blown the whole time. Like, yeah. and they were obviously like in the actual video, and why I think that video went so crazy is like their reaction just told the entire story of just like how excited that they were about it. And like, I was obviously excited about it. And that's why I put the effort into it to make it so that like they were excited about it to join me on that journey, but yeah, I think it all goes back to just like how excited the kids get for just like the little extra step to make it just that much more exciting for them.
Oh, 100%. Now, clearly you love teaching. You have amazing connections with your students. I want to look for a second at various warm-ups you have your students do, which people can also find on TikTok. So instead of the same routine, you switch it up frequently with them doing routines that allow them, what I love, to make those connections in real life, such as Farmers Insurance. And if I have a listener out there that doesn't know Farmers Insurance or that can't say they've never done the jingle as well,
exactly,
they're lying.
Right,
we all have. Same with the Tums jingle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think my favorite warm-ups someday, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Now, while this could be viewed as taking more time teaching various warm-ups, do you believe this is a building block to creating a fun environment?
Yeah, because my main goal, like as we start class, is just to get them singing. And I think whatever medium I use to do that is a successful one, and if it happens to be something like an earworm that they hear on a regular basis, or even if it's like I regularly am just doing like really simple da 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 da, something like as simple as that.
Yeah.
But like when you expound upon that and you make it into something that like you said relates directly to their daily life, the excitement just builds, and like you said, they're making connections with each other. They're making connections with their daily life. And I think we are together then working better on the product that is like the literature that we're working on for our season. Oh. Just making those connections regularly, with the goal of making it so that we're working together for the common goal.
And I risk putting myself out there as I'm not the musical guy, but
that's okay.
I do believe the warm-ups you're working with the solfege, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that connection, I mean, does it allow students to understand like you call them earworms when we're talking Farmers Insurance, or we're talking the McDonald's, I don't know if they still do the I'm loving it routine or anything else.
I'm sure they do.
But do they realize that what they're hearing every day is the exact same thing, the solfege that they're warming up with?
I think that's kind of my goal, is to like make my students able to be lifelong musicians and like have the ability to like we're already talking about making the connections, and understand that music is just music. It's how you approach it, how like stylistically, or how you approach it as a listener or as a participant, that makes it what it is and how we enjoy it. Like you can take a student that is thoroughly in depth into like a love for country music and say, hey, this melody is just so me do or whatever, and they could take the tools that hopefully I'm giving them and apply that to their life outside of choir, and hopefully carry it on with them for the rest of their life, maybe teach their children to love choral music for the same reason of being able to be like a consumer, or somebody that is considered like always wanting to perform, or just being a part of even a church choir. It gives them some wonderful tools to just be able to continue and enjoy music kind of in a different way than maybe the layman, somebody
Oh,
that
sure.
doesn't have the same musical experience.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, the jingles of the companies that's paid off. You had a pizza party provided by
Yeah.
Tums. Is that right?
Uh, it was so funny. And when I said the words pizza party, you would have thought that I told them, "Hey, I got those tickets to the Super Bowl, guys." Like they
Yeah.
just freaked out. Like it was so fun.
Yeah, and it was Tums that provided that.
Yep.
That
Yeah. They contacted me through my email and
yeah.
said, "Hey, we'd love to throw your kids a pizza party." And then they sent us like little baggies that had like a Tums fan and like a little squishy like hamburger. I was like, cool. Like that's just, I mean, and why not? It's great PR. Like,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
also like got to just make these kids Friday. Like it was a great day.
I love it. So I want to talk a minute about a quote of yours that I read. You said, quote, "If you're passionate about it, kids will bend over backwards for you. Kids will do anything you ask as long as you have fun with what you're doing." Now, that first question is, has this always been your practice? Or is this something that you've had to learn over time?
Definitely something I've had to learn. And I have only taught for 8 years, so I know that there's still like so much that I can get better at, like so much that I need to learn as a pedagogue, as just somebody that needs to experience the world more. I understand that, like, and I know that that is a fault of mine. But I would say when I started teaching, it was more like I am the all powerful knowing being in the room, right? And so and once I started to get my ego in check, and I'm not saying that my ego is ever totally in check, and this TikTok thing definitely didn't help because it just
80,
made my head
80
another
million
size
views. I
bigger.
mean, come on.
Right? I mean, it's chaos. But so once I started to realize that like that's not how you approach like a relationship in general. A one-sided relationship doesn't work, right?
Right.
And so once I learned to bridge that gap a little bit more of making it a two-way conversation, two-way relationship, letting there be both feedback and vulnerability on both sides of the coin, letting me be vulnerable to my students and the kids be vulnerable back to me. That's when I started to really start to excel as a teacher, and just have the idea that like I don't know everything, and there are definitely going to be things that my students will know more than me, and
Oh,
that's an
sure.
important thing for me to be able to voice to them too, and show them that like, oh, he's a human and he's going to make mistakes, and we're going to work together again, towards a common goal. And if that's the mindset, then the sky's the limit, truthfully. And like I said, they'll bend over backwards for that idea of like, we're working for something that is so much bigger than ourselves.
Oh, sure. And I think that you're absolutely right. If we can allow students to see that we are human too.
Right.
And because we're human, that means we'll make mistakes. We'll
Mm-hmm.
say things that are wrong, and or we'll apologize. And I think that's something that is important that listeners hear, is that you have to be a real person to students. And the word that you mentioned was vulnerable. And I think before we go, that's a great segue into this last question I have for you, which we talk about having fun and connecting with kids at their level. TikTok, great example.
Mm-hmm.
But it requires a level of vulnerability on your part. What recommendations can you give listeners who want to move their needle, so to speak, in the direction you have, but they're finding themselves struggling?
Well, first, I think any way that you can start by showing students that you are human. Like the amount of times that I talk about my son, like during class, is I'm sure probably annoying to my kids at some point, but like I'm obsessed with the kid. Like
Well, why
he's
not?
like
Yeah.
the biggest blessing that I have ever had in my life. Yeah, and my wife is wonderful as well, and I talk about her regularly too.
In case she's
Um,
listening, right?
in case you're listening, Haley, sorry. But so showing them that I am a human and bringing them into my life sphere, showing them who I am as a person, showing them that I play video games, that I love to go golf, that I read dumb books on occasion, things like that, automatically helps me relate to my students a little bit more. And I think that definitely takes vulnerability to open that door to your kids. The other part of that is that the only successes that I have in my classroom are dependent upon me allowing students to make choices.
Okay.
As a singer, as a performer, as a musician, they have to take risks that may make them uncomfortable. Meaning there's going to be a tenor that might not be able to sing a high F sharp full voice and be comfortable with it. And he might have a super loud voice crack in the middle of class. But we're talking about the fact that like he's working on making it so that he is able to do that later on.
Mm-hmm.
And we're making those decisions when we're doing something that's making us uncomfortable, with the idea of hopefully by the end of whatever the end is, that this person is better because of making those decisions. And that's kind of the idea of allowing students to be vulnerable in the class, but also making sure that I'm open enough with myself, showing them again that I am a human, that I make mistakes, that I have priorities other than just being a teacher. Like there are times that I would way rather just be at home watching Coco with my son, right?
Sure.
But I'm still in the classroom, and there are going to be days that it doesn't go absolutely perfectly, and we have all those conversations, but it automatically starts with beginning those conversations with students. Sometimes it's not going to be directly about what is the curriculum for today,
right?
Sometimes it needs to be like, hey, how's your Tuesday?
Yeah.
or what'd you have for dinner last night, or something like that, but starting with a conversation to show that you're engaged, and willing to learn about something, learn about somebody, that's vulnerability. And it doesn't need to be this like very ethereal, confusing, like misinterpreted word. I think we can all be vulnerable in our own ways.
Oh, absolutely. Now, whenever you're, going viral on TikTok with 80 million views, I mean, as an adult working with other professionals, do you get criticism from them that you're, doing TikToks when you should be, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I have had people say that, and my immediate reaction is like, I'm not doing anything different.
Right.
The only thing that's different is I'm putting a camera on in front of me.
Yeah.
And if they have an issue with my teaching, that's a different conversation. And I'm happy to back up anything that I'm doing in the classroom, because, I have done my research on the things, like the reasons I pick literature that I do, the reasons I do the warm-ups that I do, the different conversations, the different, bits of vulnerability that I'm incorporating in the classroom, things like that, but I always just start with, not a lot has changed for me as an educator. The only difference is that if I open up my phone, there's a lot more notifications, and sometimes there's a phone in front of me while I'm teaching class, which I honestly, I did that, years before I was viral on TikTok. I would record class just to, watch back and hopefully like learn something about what I did during teaching that I wasn't doing very well or whatever.
And I think it's important to point out that, like you said, nothing's changed in your teaching. You're just making it really more accessible for people to see. I mean, and if we want to talk vulnerability, I mean, putting it out there for anybody from, Joe Schmo in Maryland who's sitting, scrolling through TikTok and like, what am I watching here? I mean, that's a high level of vulnerability. And I think that we need to encourage others to do the same thing and not worry what people may say or think, because at the end of the day, we have to do what we know is best for ourselves and our students. And clearly that's what you're doing.
Right. That was, the reason that I posted the first TikTok was in case there were students that weren't able to make the reveal. It was not like for the purpose of going viral and for the purpose of showing up on Joe Schmo's phone. The purpose was so that if kids wanted to see it, or, if I maybe had a choir director friend that was like looking for an idea. I was like, this is kind of a fun idea.
Yeah.
It's kind of creative. I think people might like it.
Oh,
And then obviously it went from there.
yeah, I think people took it from liked it to loved it. It was great. We're looking forward to hearing all about the Addams Family musical in the spring of 2023. Myles, thank you so much for joining me on Anchored in Education today.
Thanks, Scott. It's been a blast.
Before I wrap up today's episode, don't forget to head over to my website, escottengland.com, and click on today's episode to read more about Myles and also find links to all his social media. And if you haven't already, let me again encourage you, subscribe to Anchored in Education on whatever platform you get your podcasts. While he admitted that going viral can mess with your humility, Myles is more than humble on the one thing that matters, the effort. I can tell you from producing a weekly podcast, the effort and energy that goes into each episode making sure they're ready to go. I have also had nearly 100 episodes to refine it. Myles' revelation went beyond just deciding to hold students in suspense. The revelation detailed how passionate he is in delivering a premium experience to his students. Now, do we have to go to the level Myles did to create these experiences? Definitely not. We all choose to connect with our students in our own unique ways. The most important thing is that we are showing students that we care, that we are there beyond just collecting a paycheck. We are there to enrich minds and lives. Students can tell when we are invested in what we are teaching. And really, why wouldn't we want to have fun at work? I know I do. Having fun and connecting with educators like Myles is what keeps me anchored in education.